The rain hammered against the bus shelter's plastic roof, each drop a sharp percussion that matched the throbbing behind my temples. I shifted my weight from one aching foot to the other, feeling the worn sole of my sneaker press against the cold concrete. My fingers worried the frayed strap of my canvas bag, the same bag Mama had carried for 15 years before passing it down to me. Inside, 3 crumpled bills and some coins represented what remained of this week's tips from the diner. 48 hours without sleep did strange things to perception. The streetlights bled into watercolor smears, and every sound seemed wrapped in cotton. I'd pulled a double at Rosie's diner, then rushed across town to clean offices until dawn, only to return for the morning shift. My uniform, a cheap polyester dress that never quite dried in our basement apartment, clung to my skin beneath my jacket. The bus hissed to a stop, brakes squealing. I fumbled for my fare, fingers clumsy with exhaustion. That's when I noticed him. An elderly man stood at the curb, his hand trembling as he patted his coat pockets with increasing desperation. Rain had plastered his thin gray hair to his scalp, and his shoulders hunched forward in a way that spoke of defeat. He wore a suit, outdated but once expensive, I could tell by the weight of the fabric, now soaked through and hanging loose on his frame. "Please," he said to the driver, his accent thick and unfamiliar. "I had money. I swear I had—" "No fare, no ride." The driver's voice was flat, bored. He'd heard every excuse. Something twisted in my chest. I knew that desperation. I'd lived it every day since Mama got sick. Watched it carve lines into her face as she chose between medicine and food, rent and heat. The old man's fingers shook harder as he checked his pockets again, and I saw myself reflected in his humiliation. Small, powerless, invisible to everyone who mattered. "Wait." My voice came out rougher than intended. I stepped forward, pressing $2 into the driver's hand, for both of us. The old man's head snapped up, his eyes, pale blue, watery with age, fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. For a moment, something flickered in that gaze, something that didn't match the trembling hands or stooped posture. Then it was gone, replaced by grateful confusion. "Miss, you don't have to." "It's done." I gestured toward the rear of the bus. "Come on." He followed slowly, and I noticed despite my exhaustion how he moved. Careful, measured, like someone conscious of taking up space. We sat in adjacent seats, the bus lurching forward into morning traffic. The heating system blasted stale air that smelled of diesel and damp clothing. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You are very kind. It's just bus fare." I stared out the window, watching the city blur past, broken storefronts, graffitied walls, people huddled in doorways. My world, rendered in shades of gray. Everyone needs help sometimes, not everyone gives it. His voice carried a strange weight, each word chosen carefully. "What is your name?" "Elena." I don't know why I told him. Maybe exhaustion had stripped away my usual caution. "Elena Reyes." He repeated it softly, like committing it to memory. "A beautiful name. I am—" He paused, and that flicker returned to his eyes. "You can call me Victor." The bus stopped at 5th and Main. Through the rain-streaked window, I glimpsed Rosie's diner, my refuge in prison, where I'd spend the next 8 hours serving coffee and absorbing the casual cruelty of customers who never saw me as quite human. "This is my stop." I stood, legs protesting. "Good luck, Victor." His hand caught my wrist, gentle but firm, and I felt the papery texture of aged skin. "Wait, you work there?" He nodded toward the diner. "Yeah, every day." I pulled free carefully, not wanting to seem rude. "Why?" Something passed across his face, an expression I couldn't read. "Be careful, Elena Reyes. The world is not kind to angels." Before I could respond, he'd released me, and the moment felt strange enough that I wondered if I'd imagined it. I hurried off the bus into the rain, shoulders hunched against the downpour. Rosie's diner occupied the ground floor of a building that had seen better decades. The neon sign, Rosie's, in cursive pink letters, flickered erratically, the apostrophe long dead. Inside, the air hung thick with grease, burnt coffee, and the accumulated desperation of people with nowhere better to be. "You're late." Rosie didn't look up from the register, her voice gravelly from 40 years of chain smoking. "Table 6 needs coffee." Sorry. I tied my apron with practiced efficiency, ignoring the way my hands trembled. The bus was... Don't care. Move. I moved. The morning shift blurred into its usual rhythm, refilling cups, taking orders, dodging the wandering hands of men who thought a $2 tip bought them the right to touch. My feet screamed inside my sneakers. But I'd learned to partition pain into a separate room in my mind, somewhere I didn't have to visit unless absolutely necessary. By noon, the lunch rush hit like a wave, the diner filled with construction workers, office assistants on tight budgets, and the occasional businessman slumming it for authentic working-class experience. I navigated between tables with the precision of long practice, balancing plates and keeping my expression neutral. That's when they arrived. The bell above the door chimed, but the sound felt different somehow. Sharper, more insistent. 3 men entered, and the diner's atmosphere shifted like barometric pressure before a storm. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they changed pitch, became more cautious. The first 2 men were broad-shouldered and watchful, their eyes constantly scanning the room. They wore dark suits that fit too well, fabric moving like liquid across their frames. But it was the 3rd man who made my breath stutter. He couldn't have been older than 30, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, a jawline that could cut glass. But his eyes ruined any conventional beauty. They were dark, almost black, and held a coldness that made me think of deep water, the kind that drowned people silently. He moved through the diner like he owned it. No, like he owned everything, and was simply acknowledging his property. The 2 men flanked him, and I noticed how other customers subtly shifted away, creating space without conscious decision. They took the corner booth, the one with clear sightlines to both doors and the kitchen. One of the men sat facing the entrance, while the other positioned himself with his back to the wall. The 3rd man, the beautiful, dangerous one, slid into the seat with fluid grace. Elena, Rosie's voice was tight. Take their order. But that's not my section. Now. Something in her tone made my stomach drop. I grabbed my notepad and approached the booth, keeping my eyes down. Good afternoon. What can I... The words died in my throat. The dangerous man was staring at me. Not the casual once-over most men gave. Not even the predatory assessment that made my skin crawl. This was different. Intense. Focused. Like he was cataloging every detail. His gaze traveled from my scuffed sneakers to my frizzy hair scraped back in a ponytail, missing nothing. Coffee, he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Black. Same, said the man to his right. Water for me, added the other. I scribbled the orders with shaking hands, hating the weakness. Any food? Not yet. The dangerous man leaned back, and I noticed his suit, bespoke, probably worth more than I made in 6 months. A gold watch caught the light at his wrist, the kind that told time in 3 time zones and cost more than a car. What's your name? Elena. It came out as barely a whisper. Elena. He repeated it the same way Victor had, but where the old man's voice held warmth, this man's tone wrapped around my name like possession, a beautiful name for a beautiful girl. I flushed, hating the reaction. I'll get your coffee. His hand didn't touch me, but he raised one finger, just that, a single gesture, and I froze. You seem tired, Elena. Long shift? I'm fine. The words came automatically. Never show weakness, Mama had taught me. Never let them see you break. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement? Interest? Of course you are. I fled to the coffee station, pulse racing. Behind me, I heard him say something to his companions in a language I didn't recognize, harsh, consonant-heavy, beautiful in its own brutal way. One of them laughed, the sound like gravel in a garbage disposal. My hands shook as I poured coffee, sloshing it over the rim. Rosie appeared at my elbow, her grip iron on my arm. Listen to me, she hissed. Whatever he asks, you say yes. Whatever he wants, you give him. Understand? Who is he? Her face went gray. Someone you don't ask questions about. Now move. I delivered the coffee, setting the cups down with exaggerated care. The dangerous man watched every movement, and I felt his gaze like a physical touch against my skin. "Thank you, Elena." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're very kind." The word struck me oddly, the same phrase Victor had used, but before I could process it, one of the other men's phones buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then leaned close to the dangerous man, whispering urgently. The beautiful face went cold, every trace of amusement vanishing. "When?" More whispering, too low for me to hear. He stood abruptly, the movement so fluid it seemed choreographed. "We're leaving." They dropped $200 bills on the table, for 3 drinks that cost maybe $5 total, and headed for the door. But at the threshold, the dangerous man paused. He turned, those dark eyes finding me across the crowded diner. "Elena Reyes," his voice carried despite the noise. "I'll be seeing you again." It wasn't a prediction, it was a promise. Then they were gone, and the diner exhaled collectively. I stood frozen, the 2 bills burning in my hand as Rosie snatched them away. "That's mine," she said. "Hazard pay." I didn't argue. I just watched through the window as a black SUV pulled up, sleek, expensive, windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. The dangerous man slid into the back seat, and the vehicle disappeared into traffic like a shark beneath waves. Something had shifted. I felt it in my bones, the way animals sense earthquakes before they hit. My simple act of kindness on a rainy bus had set something in motion, something vast and terrible and inevitable. I just didn't know what yet, but as I cleared the booth, I noticed something they'd left behind. A business card, cream-colored cardstock with expensive weight. No name, no company. Just a phone number embossed in black ink, and beneath it, a single word in elegant script, Dimitri. My hands trembled as I slipped it into my apron pocket, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just stepped off a cliff into darkness, with no idea how far I'd fall. The card burned against my hip through the rest of my shift, a constant reminder of eyes too dark, and a voice that wrapped around my name like ownership. I told myself to throw it away during every trash run, every time I passed the dumpster out back. My fingers would brush the pocket of my apron, and I'd hesitate, then move on. Weakness. That's what it was. By the time my shift ended at 6, my legs felt like they'd been filled with concrete. The evening rain had softened to a drizzle that turned the city streets into mirrors, reflecting neon and headlights in fractured patterns. I pulled my jacket tighter and started the familiar walk to the bus stop, my canvas bag bumping against my hip with each step. The basement apartment I shared with Mama sat in a building that had been condemned twice and reprieved both times through a combination of bribery and bureaucratic incompetence. Our landlord, a man named Sal, who smelled perpetually of cheap cigars and cheaper cologne, charged us $800 a month for 600 square feet of mold, drafts, and pipes that screamed like dying animals when anyone upstairs flushed. I descended the cracked concrete steps, fishing for my keys. The door stuck. It always stuck, and I had to shoulder it open with a practiced shove. Inside, the smell of mentholated ointment and sickness hit me like a wall. "Mama?" I dropped my bag by the door, already moving toward the alcove that served as her bedroom. She lay propped against pillows I'd arranged that morning, her thin frame barely making an impression beneath the blankets. At 52, she looked 70. Cancer did that, carved away everything soft until only angles remained. But her eyes were still bright, still warm, and they tracked me with fierce attention as I entered. "Mihija." Her voice rasped, but she smiled. "How was work?" "Fine." I sat on the edge of her bed, taking her hand. The bones felt fragile as a bird's beneath papery skin. Busy lunch rush, good tips. A lie. Rosie had kept the money from the dangerous men, and my actual tips had barely covered the bus fare I'd given Victor, but Mama didn't need to know that. She had enough to worry about. "You look exhausted." Her fingers squeezed mine with surprising strength. "You're working too much, Elena." "I'm fine." The automatic response, the one I gave everyone. "Have you eaten?" "A little soup. Mrs. Chen from upstairs brought some." She studied my face with the intensity only mothers possess. "Something happened today. Tell me." I should have known better than to try hiding things from her. Even sick, even dying, she read me like a book she'd written herself. "I helped an old man on the bus this morning. I said slowly. Paid his fare. It was nothing, just your kind heart. She smiled, but worry creased her forehead. What else? The card in my pocket felt heavier. I pulled it out, holding it up to the dim light of the bedside lamp. These men came into the diner. One of them, he seemed to know about it, about the old man. He left this. Mama's face changed. The warmth drained away, replaced by something harder. Fear, maybe, or recognition. What did he look like, this man? Young. Expensive suit. Dark hair, dark eyes. I thought about how to describe the aura he'd carried. The way the room had shifted around him. Dangerous. Dios mío. Mama's grip tightened painfully. Elena, listen to me very carefully. You throw that card away. You forget about these men. You hear me? Mama, what? I grew up in these streets. Her voice took on an edge I rarely heard. I know what men like that are. They're poison, mihija. Beautiful, tempting poison that destroys everything it touches. He just left a card. It doesn't mean... It means everything. She pulled me closer, and I smelled the sickness on her breath, medication and decay and desperation. Promise me. Promise you'll stay away. I promised. What else could I do? But that night, lying on the sofa that doubled as my bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Dmitri, if that was even his real name, had looked at me. Like I mattered. Like I was visible when the whole world had spent my entire life looking through me as if I were glass. Sleep came in fits, broken by dreams of dark eyes and darker promises. The next morning brought unexpected chaos. I arrived at the diner to find Rosie pacing behind the counter, her phone pressed to her ear, face flushed and unhealthy crimson. She spotted me and made a sharp gesture. Come here now. What's wrong? I asked, dropping my bag in the back room. Everything. She ended her call with a vicious jab. Maria called in sick. Tony quit. Just up and quit. Said he got a better offer. And we've got a party of 12 coming in at noon, some kind of business lunch. My stomach sank. A party of 12? Rosie, we can't handle that with just... We don't have a choice. She thrust an apron at me. You're working doubles until I find replacements. I'll pay overtime. Another lie, probably. But I couldn't afford to argue. I needed every hour I could get. Mama's medication alone cost $300 a month, and that didn't count rent, food, utilities, or the 1,000 other expenses that bled us dry. The morning shift crawled by in a haze of coffee refills and burnt toast. My feet throbbed, my back ached, and I'd developed a headache that sat behind my eyes like a nail, but I kept moving, kept smiling, kept pretending I was fine. At 11:30, I was wiping down table 6, the same booth where Dmitri had sat, when the bell chimed. I looked up. My heart stopped. Victor stood in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, the same broad-shouldered bodyguards from yesterday, and he looked different. Still old, still gray, but he stood straighter now. The defeated slump had vanished, replaced by an erectness that spoke of military discipline. His clothes were different too. A crisp shirt, tailored slacks, shoes polished to a mirror shine, and behind them, just stepping through the door, was Dmitri. The morning light caught his features, making him look even more impossibly perfect and impossibly cold. He wore a different suit today, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, and moved with that same predatory grace. But his eyes went straight to me, and something in them made my breath catch. Recognition. Satisfaction. Possession. Elena. Victor's voice was warm, grandfatherly, but I heard the steel beneath it now. What a pleasant surprise. My mouth went dry. Victor? I don't understand. Table for 4, Dmitri said, cutting through my confusion. His gaze never left my face. The corner booth. Elena will serve us. It wasn't a request. Rosie materialized at my elbow, practically vibrating with nervousness. Of course, Mr. She caught herself. Of course. Right this way. They settled into the booth with practiced efficiency, the 2 bodyguards taking positions that gave them clear views of the entrances, Victor sliding in with unexpected grace, and Dmitri claiming the power seat, the one that commanded the entire room. I approached on shaking legs, notepad clutched like a shield. "What can I get you?" "Coffee," Victor said, and his smile held genuine warmth, black, like yesterday on the bus. My blood turned to ice. Dimitri's lips curved into something dark and amused. "You didn't tell her, did you, old friend?" "Tell me what?" I looked between them, confusion warring with growing dread. Victor sighed, and for a moment he looked every one of his 70-odd years. "I apologize for the deception, my dear. Yesterday, on the bus, I was testing the neighborhood, seeing how people here behave when they think no one important is watching." "Testing?" The word came out strangled. "Victor works for me," Dimitri said, his voice casual but his eyes intense. "He's been my head of security for 20 years. I sent him out to assess the area, to see if the people here had any kindness left in them." He leaned forward and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne, leather, and something darker, like gunpowder masked by cedar. "You were the only one who helped him." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the laminate dig into my palms. "You set me up. I wanted to know who you were." Dimitri's voice dropped lower, intimate despite the public setting. "After you showed such compassion, I needed to understand what kind of woman gives away money she clearly needs to a stranger who might be drunk, might be dangerous, might be anything. That's..." I couldn't find words. Rage and humiliation burned in my chest. "You had no right. I have every right." He said it simply, a statement of fact rather than arrogance. "This is my city, Elena. Every street, every building, every person in it. And when something unusual happens, I pay attention." One of the bodyguard's phones buzzed. He glanced at it, then leaned close to Dimitri, whispering rapidly in that harsh, beautiful language I'd heard yesterday. Dimitri's expression didn't change, but something happened in his eyes, a flash of cold fury that made me step back involuntarily. "Problem?" Victor asked quietly. "Nothing that can't be handled." Dimitri stood with fluid grace, buttoning his jacket. "Elena, I need to leave, but we're not finished talking." "Yes, we are." The words burst out before I could stop them. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not interested. I'm just a waitress trying to survive." "Whatever you think I am, whatever you want from me." His hand caught my chin, not roughly, but with unmistakable authority, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. His skin was warm, slightly calloused, and his touch sent electricity racing down my spine. "You think you're just a waitress," he said softly, so quietly only I could hear. "You think you're nothing. But I see you, Elena Reyes. I see exactly what you are." "And what's that?" I managed to whisper. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, a touch so brief I might have imagined it. "Mine." Then he was gone, Victor and the bodyguards following in his wake. The black SUV pulled up within seconds, and they disappeared into it like smoke. I stood frozen, my chin still tingling where he'd touched it, while around me the diner buzzed with shocked whispers. Rosie grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing." My voice sounded distant, disconnected. He didn't say anything, but the card in my pocket felt different now. Not just a piece of expensive paper with a phone number, but a summons. A claim. A promise of something I didn't understand but could feel rushing toward me, like a train in the darkness. That night, I sat at Mama's bedside while she slept fitfully, her breathing ragged and wet. The medication had stopped working as well. We both knew it. Neither of us spoke of it. Soon we'd need the expensive treatments, the ones insurance didn't cover, the ones that cost more than I made in a year. I pulled out the card, studying it in the dim light. One phone call. That's all it would take. But Mama's words echoed in my mind. Poison. Beautiful, tempting poison. I thought about Dimitri's eyes, the way he'd looked at me like I mattered. Like I was something precious and rare instead of just another exhausted girl in a cheap uniform. I thought about his touch, the heat of it, the certainty. Mine. The word should have terrified me. It should have sent me running. Instead, I felt something darker stirring in my chest. Curiosity, yes, but also a terrible, dangerous hope. Hope that someone powerful might look at me and see value. Hope that I might matter to someone who could actually change things. Hope was the most dangerous drug of all. I slipped the card back into my pocket and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw darkness watching me with the promise of salvation or damnation. I just couldn't tell which. 3 days passed like a fever dream. Dmitri didn't return to the diner, but his presence lingered like expensive cologne in an empty room. I felt watched constantly, not paranoid exactly, but aware. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of dark SUVs idling at corners, or men in well-cut suits drinking coffee they never touched. They never approached, never spoke, just observed. Rosie noticed. "You need to be careful," she muttered while we restocked napkins on the 3rd day. "Men like that don't just forget about people." "I'm not doing anything," I protested, but my hand unconsciously moved to my apron pocket where the card still lived, corners softening from being handled too much. "That's the problem. He's waiting for you to make the first move." She shot me a look that mixed pity and something darker. "And when you do, because you will, everything changes." I wanted to argue, but Mama's labored breathing that morning had stolen my voice. She'd barely managed 3 spoonfuls of soup, and her hands had shaken so badly I'd had to help her drink water. The bottle of medication on her nightstand was almost empty, and the pharmacy had already called twice about the refill we couldn't afford. $463. That's what we needed. I had $87 in tips hidden in a coffee can under the sink, and payday wasn't for another week. The math didn't work. It never worked. That evening, I walked home through streets painted gold by the setting sun. The city looked almost beautiful in this light. Even the graffiti seemed artistic, the broken windows like intentional design. I passed the corner store where Mrs. Lopez sold scratch tickets and cigarettes, the laundromat where Maria did wash for extra cash, the boarded-up church where Father Miguel used to hold services before the archdiocese shut it down. My neighborhood, my prison, my entire world contained in 6 blocks of crumbling concrete and fading dreams. The card in my pocket whispered promises. I was so lost in thought I almost didn't notice the black Mercedes parked outside my building. Almost. But instinct. The same instinct that kept girls like me alive in neighborhoods like this made me freeze 3 buildings away. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. One of Dimitri's bodyguards, the one with the scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He didn't approach, just leaned against the car and lit a cigarette, his eyes finding me across the distance. Waiting. My heart hammered against my ribs. I could run, but where? He knew where I lived, where I worked, probably everything about me down to my shoe size. Running was pointless, so I walked forward, each step deliberate, until I stood 5 feet from him. "Mr. Volkov wishes to speak with you." His accent was thicker than Dimitri's, consonants hard as bullets. He gestured to the back seat with his cigarette. "Please, and if I refuse?" Something that might have been respect flickered across his scarred face. "Then I drive away, and you go inside to your sick mother. But Mr. Volkov, he does not give many chances." The threat was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. I thought about Mama upstairs, her breathing getting worse each day. I thought about the empty medication bottle. I thought about every door that had ever closed in my face, every person who'd looked through me like I was invisible. "Where?" I asked. "Somewhere safe." He opened the back door. "You have my word. No harm will come to you." I didn't believe him, but I got in anyway. The Mercedes moved through the city like a knife through water, smooth and purposeful. The bodyguard, he'd introduced himself as Alexei, drove in silence while I watched my neighborhood disappear behind us. We crossed into parts of the city I'd only seen in magazines, where buildings gleamed with glass and steel, where trees grew in neat rows, where people walked dogs that probably ate better than I did. We pulled up to a restaurant I recognized from billboards. Sapphire, 5 stars, reservations booked months in advance, the kind of place where a single appetizer cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Warm light spilled from floor-to-ceiling windows, and I glimpsed white tablecloths, crystal glasses, elegant people living elegant lives. "I can't go in there." Panic clawed at my throat. "Look at me." "Mr. Volkov is waiting." Alexei opened my door with surprising gentleness. "He does not care about clothes." But I cared. I wore the same uniform I'd served coffee in all day, cheap polyester wrinkled and stained, my hair still scraped back in a messy ponytail. I smelled like grease and desperation. Alexei placed a hand on my shoulder, firm but not cruel. He sees you, Miss Reyes, the real you. That is why you're here. Somehow that made it worse. The restaurant's interior hit me like a physical blow. The scent of expensive food, the murmur of refined conversation, the clink of real silverware against fine china. Every head turned as we entered, eyes cataloging my cheap uniform and scuffed sneakers with the kind of polite disdain only money could perfect. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and cease existing. Then I saw him. Dmitri sat at a corner table, positioned with his back to the wall and clear sightlines to every entrance. He'd removed his jacket, and his white shirt had been rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. A glass of amber liquid sat untouched before him, but his attention was entirely on me. He stood as we approached, a gesture so unexpected it froze me mid-step. The restaurant owner materialized at his elbow, wringing his hands nervously. "Mr. Volkov, is everything perfect?" Dmitri's voice was quiet, but the owner fled like he'd been struck. Those dark eyes found mine. "Elena, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" The words came out sharper than intended. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "There's always a choice. Sit." I sat. What else could I do? A waiter appeared instantly, placing a menu before me that had no prices listed. Never a good sign. Dmitri dismissed him with a gesture, then leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You didn't call," he said. "I don't know you." I forced myself to meet his gaze, even though it felt like staring into deep water. "You sent someone to test me like I'm some kind of experiment. Then you touched me and said," I caught myself. "You had no right." "No," he agreed quietly. "I didn't. But I did it anyway. Do you know why? Because you're used to getting what you want. Because I've lived 32 years in a world of liars, traitors, and cowards." His voice remained soft, almost conversational, but intensity radiated from him like heat. And then I watched security footage of a girl who looked dead on her feet give her last dollars to a stranger who might have robbed her, who smiled at him like his dignity mattered, who saw a person where everyone else saw garbage. My throat tightened. "That doesn't give you the right to— I know what you think I am." He cut through my protest like a blade through silk. "You think I'm dangerous. You're right. You think I'm powerful. Also right. You think I'm interested in you for reasons you can't understand. Completely right. Then why am I here?" He reached across the table, his fingers brushing the back of my hand. The touch sent electricity up my arm, and I hated my body for responding. "Because your mother has stage 4 cancer," he said quietly, and my world tilted. "Because her medication costs $463, and you have 87 in tips. Because you work 90 hours a week and still can't keep your head above water. Because you're drowning, Elena, and you're too proud to call for help." Horror and fury warred in my chest. "You investigated me? I investigate everyone," he said it without apology. "The moment you paid Victor's fare, I needed to know who you were, what you wanted, what you needed." "What I need," I said through gritted teeth, "is for you to leave me alone, liar." The word held no anger, just certainty. "You need someone to see you, to acknowledge that you exist as more than just a servant. You need someone who can actually help instead of just taking." His thumb stroked across my knuckles, a touch so gentle it felt obscene. "You need me." I yanked my hand back. "You're insane." "Probably." He leaned back, and I noticed for the first time how tired he looked. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw. "But I'm also your best option. Maybe your only option." "For what?" "Your mother's treatment. Full coverage at the best hospital in the city. Private room, best doctors, every medication she needs." He said it casually, like offering to buy me coffee. "Plus a new apartment in a building that won't poison you with mold. And a salary, $20,000 a month, deposited directly into your account." The numbers were so absurd I almost laughed. "In exchange for what? Because men like you don't give anything for free." "In exchange," he said quietly, For you, the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us in a bubble of terrible clarity. You want me to be your… what? Mistress? Property? I want you to be mine. He said it simply, the way someone might say the sky is blue. I want you in my home, in my life, under my protection. I want to know you're safe, that you're cared for, that no one will ever make you invisible again. That's… I struggled for words. That's insane. You don't even know me. I know you paid a stranger's bus fare with money you desperately needed. I know you work yourself to death for a mother who's dying anyway. I know you lie to her about how bad things are because you think you're protecting her. His eyes held mine, and I felt pinned like a butterfly under glass. I know you're brave and kind, and so damn tired you can barely stand. And I know that if I let you walk away tonight, you'll go home to that basement apartment and your mother will die slowly because you don't have $463. Each word hit like a physical blow because they were true. All of it was true. Why? I whispered. Why me? Something shifted in his expression. Vulnerability, maybe, or memory. Because 20 years ago, my mother paid for a stranger's meal with money we needed for rent. That stranger was Victor. He told my father, who was difficult, violent. My mother's kindness saved our lives. He paused, and pain flickered across his features. She died 6 months later, cancer. We couldn't afford treatment. Oh God. I'm not your mother, I managed. No, but you're the first person I've met who reminds me that good people still exist. He stood, moving around the table with that predatory grace. I won't force you, Elena. You can walk away right now. Alexei will drive you home, and you'll never see me again. But your mother's medication runs out in 3 days, and we both know what happens then. He leaned down, his lips close to my ear, and I smelled cedar and gunpowder and something darker. Or, he breathed, you can say yes. You can let me take care of you, protect you, give you everything you've never allowed yourself to want. All you have to do is be mine. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Choose, Elena, but choose now. The restaurant hummed around us, beautiful people living beautiful lives, and I sat in my stained uniform at a crossroads that would define everything to come. Mama's words echoed. Poison. Beautiful, tempting poison. But poison, I thought wildly, sometimes looked like medicine, and when you were drowning, you didn't question the hand that pulled you from the water. Yes, I whispered. His eyes flared with triumph, possession, and something that might have been relief. Then you're mine, he said, and sealed it with a kiss that tasted like damnation and salvation all at once. The kiss broke something open inside me. Or maybe it sealed something shut. I couldn't tell which. Dimitri's lips moved against mine, with a confidence that suggested he'd already won, and perhaps he had. Perhaps I'd been his from the moment I'd paid Victor's bus fare, caught in a trap I hadn't known existed. When he pulled back, his thumb traced my lower lip, proprietary and gentle. We leave now. Alexei will collect your things from your apartment tomorrow. Wait. Panic fluttered in my chest. My mother. I need to see her, to explain. She's already being moved. He said it so casually, checking his watch like discussing the weather. An ambulance will arrive at your building in 20 minutes. Private room at St. Catherine's Medical Center, the best oncology team in the state. She'll receive her first treatment tonight. The world tilted. When did you… The moment you said yes, his hand slid to the back of my neck, firm and possessive. Did you think I wouldn't have everything prepared? I don't make offers I'm not ready to fulfill immediately. I need to be there. She'll be terrified. She'll be cared for. His voice remained soft, but steel ran underneath. You'll see her tomorrow, when she's settled. Tonight, you come home with me. Home. The word carried weight I didn't understand yet. The restaurant owner appeared again, practically bowing as Dimitri guided me toward the exit. Curious eyes followed us, speculation, envy, judgment. But Dimitri's hand at the small of my back radiated such authority that no one dared speak. Outside, the Mercedes waited like a sleek predator. Alexei held the door, his scarred face impassive, and I caught a glimpse of another vehicle behind us. Another SUV, more security, How many people did it take to protect one man? Or was I the one being protected now? The thought should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like a noose tightening. Dimitri slid in beside me, close enough that his thigh pressed against mine. The door closed with a heavy, final sound. As we pulled away from the restaurant, he made a phone call in that harsh, beautiful language. Russian, I realize now. His voice crisp with commands. "Is she afraid?" he asked suddenly, switching to English. His eyes studied me in the dim interior light. "Your mother?" "Always." The word escaped before I could stop it. "She's been afraid since my father died. Afraid of being alone. Of leaving me alone. Of what happens when—" My voice cracked. His hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. The gesture was almost tender, which made it more unsettling. "She won't die alone in a basement. That's my promise to you." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Why are you doing this? I told you. I see you." His thumb traced circles on my palm, and what I see, I keep. The possessiveness should have terrified me. Instead, exhaustion and relief crashed over me in waves. For the first time in 3 years, since Mama's diagnosis, since the medical bills started drowning us, someone else was making decisions. Someone else was carrying the weight. I let myself sink into it just for a moment, just long enough to catch my breath. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building that probably cost more than my neighborhood's annual GDP. The elevator required a key card, rose silently for what felt like forever, and opened directly into a foyer of marble and recessed lighting. "Welcome home," Dimitri said, and the words landed like a brand. I stepped into a space that belonged in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city sprawled below like scattered diamonds. The furniture was modern and minimal. Leather, glass, steel, but somehow warm. Art hung on the walls, pieces I didn't recognize but knew instinctively were worth fortunes. "Your room is through there," he gestured to a hallway. "Bathroom attached. I had clothes brought in. Your size, I hope. If anything doesn't fit, tell Alexei and it will be corrected." My room. Not our room. The distinction registered dimly through my shock. "I don't understand." I turned to face him. "You said you wanted me to be yours." You thought I'd drag you straight to bed." His smile held dark amusement. "I could. You agreed to be mine, and I keep what's mine. But I'm not a monster, Elena. You're exhausted, overwhelmed, and probably in shock. Go. Sleep. Tomorrow we'll discuss the details of our arrangement." Arrangement. The word was clinical, transactional. Somehow that made it easier to breathe. "And if I try to leave? There are 2 guards in the lobby, and 1 on this floor." He said it without inflection. "But you won't leave. You have nowhere to go, and your mother needs you to stay." The truth of it stung because it was absolute. I was trapped. Not by chains or locks, but by love and necessity. He moved closer, and I smelled that cedar and gunpowder scent again. His hand cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. "I'm not the villain in this story, Elena. I'm the man who's going to give you everything you've been denied your entire life. All I ask in return is your loyalty, your presence, and your trust." "Trust?" The word came out bitter. "You investigated me, manipulated me, trapped me." "Saved you," he corrected softly, "the moment your mother's medication ran out. What would you have done? Borrowed from loan sharks? Sold yourself to men who'd use you and discard you? At least with me, you're protected. Valued. Mine." That word again. Mine. He kissed my forehead, a gesture so gentle it felt obscene. "Malaya," and stepped back. "Tomorrow, everything changes." I wanted to argue, to rage, to demand answers to questions I couldn't articulate. But exhaustion dragged at me like lead weights, and my body remembered it hadn't slept properly in days. So I went. The bedroom was larger than my entire apartment had been. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in white linens that probably cost more than a month's rent. The attached bathroom featured marble counters, a rainfall shower, and a tub deep enough to swim in. I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Hair tangled, uniform wrinkled, eyes hollow with exhaustion. I looked exactly like what I was. A girl in over her head, drowning in waters too deep to fathom. The closet held clothes in my size, just as Dimitri had promised. Silk pajamas, designer jeans, cashmere sweaters, dresses that cost more than I made in a month. Everything with tags still attached, waiting for me like I'd been expected. How long had he been planning this? I showered until the water ran cold, scrubbing away the diner's grease and the day's humiliations. The soap smelled expensive, lavender and something darker, richer. I dried off with towels so soft they felt like sin and pulled on the silk pajamas that slid over my skin like water. The bed welcomed me like an embrace. I expected to lie awake for hours, mind racing with everything that had happened. Instead, sleep pulled me under within minutes, dragging me down into darkness punctuated by dreams of dark eyes and darker promises. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close and the smell of coffee. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it crashed back. Dimitri, the restaurant, the impossible choice I'd made. A knock at the door. "Miss Reyes, may I enter?" A woman's voice, accented but gentle. I pulled the blankets up to my chin. "Yes?" She was perhaps 50, with iron gray hair pulled into a severe bun and kind eyes that assessed me quickly. "I am Katya. I manage Mr. Volkov's household. He asked me to help you prepare for the day." "Prepare for what?" "Breakfast with Mr. Volkov, then a visit to see your mother." She moved efficiently around the room, opening curtains, laying out clothes on the bed. "He has also arranged for legal counsel regarding your mother's medical directives and your own financial situation." My head spun. I don't... Mr. Volkov is very thorough. Katya's smile held understanding. "It can be overwhelming at first. But he takes care of what belongs to him." There it was again. Belonging. Possession. The language of ownership wrapped in the trappings of care. The clothes she'd selected were beautiful but understated. Soft jeans, a cream sweater, leather boots that probably cost more than my monthly salary had been. I dressed mechanically while Katya bustled about, and by the time I emerged, I looked like a different person. Someone who belonged in this world of marble and money. Someone who wasn't me at all. Dimitri waited in the dining room, dressed casually in dark slacks and a white shirt, reading something on his phone. He looked up as I entered, and satisfaction flickered across his features. "Beautiful," he said simply. "Sit. Eat." The table held enough food for 10 people. Pastries, fruit, eggs, bacon, fresh juice. My stomach growled traitorously, and I realized I hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch. I sat. I ate. And I watched him watch me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Your mother is stable," he said after a moment. "She received her first treatment last night. The doctors are optimistic." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I felt dizzy. "Can I see her?" "After breakfast. But there are things we need to discuss first." He set down his phone, giving me his full attention. "You'll live here. You won't work at the diner anymore. Rosie has already been compensated for your sudden departure. You'll have a credit card with no limit and a monthly allowance deposited into a new account I've opened in your name." Each statement landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples I couldn't predict. "In exchange," he continued, "you'll accompany me to business dinners, social events, and anywhere else I require your presence. You'll be available when I want you, attentive when I need you, and loyal always. You're describing a mistress." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm describing my woman." His eyes held mine. "There's a difference. A mistress is temporary, hidden, disposable. You are none of those things. You're mine, Elena. Publicly, completely, and permanently." The word permanent caught in my throat. "For how long?" "Until I release you," he said it simply. "Which I won't." I struggled for words. "That's insane. You can't just decide to keep a person." "I can." He leaned forward, and I caught that cedar and gunpowder scent again. "I have. The question isn't whether you're mine. That's already settled. The question is whether you'll accept it gracefully, or fight me every step of the way. And if I fight," his smile held no warmth, "then I'll enjoy breaking your resistance. But you'll be mine either way. The only difference is how much you suffer first." The threat was delivered so calmly, it took a moment to register. When it did, Fury ignited in my chest. You're threatening me? I'm being honest. He stood, moving around the table with that predatory grace. I don't make idle promises, and I don't play games. You're in my world now, under my protection, and that comes with rules. Break them, and there are consequences. He stopped behind my chair, his hands settling on my shoulders. The touch was warm, possessive, unmistakably dominant. But obey them, he continued softly, and I'll give you everything. Your mother's health, financial security, protection from a world that's chewed you up and spit you out. All the things you've sacrificed for, suffered for, bled for, they're yours now, because you're mine. His lips brushed my ear, and I felt the promise in his breath. Now finish your breakfast, Malaya. We're going to see your mother, and I want her to see that I take care of what belongs to me. St. Catherine's Medical Center occupied a building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Marble floors, fresh flowers in crystal vases, staff who moved with quiet efficiency rather than harried desperation. The private wing, where Dimitri's money had placed Mama, was even more surreal. Thick carpets, artwork on the walls, rooms with actual windows that let in natural light. Alexei and another bodyguard flanked us as we walked through the corridors. Nurses nodded respectfully to Dimitri, and I noticed how they didn't question his presence, didn't ask for identification. His authority here was absolute, purchased with money and reinforced by fear. Room 412, he said, his hand at the small of my back. I'll wait outside. Give you privacy. I looked up at him, surprised. You're not coming in? This moment is yours. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. But I'll be right here, always. The promise felt like a chain and a lifeline simultaneously. I pushed open the door. Mama lay propped against pillows in a bed that looked impossibly comfortable compared to the sagging mattress in our basement apartment. An IV drip fed medication into her arm, and monitors beeped softly. But her eyes, when they opened and found me, were clearer than they'd been in months. Elena? Her voice was stronger, less raspy. Mihija, what is all this? I moved to her bedside, taking her hand. The bone still felt fragile, but her grip had force behind it. You're getting treatment, Mama. Real treatment. But how? We don't have... Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by fear. Elena, what did you do? The question hung heavy between us. What had I done? Sold myself? Saved us? Both? I met someone, I said carefully. Someone who wants to help. The man from the diner. It wasn't a question. The dangerous one. His name is Dimitri. I squeezed her hand. And yes, he's dangerous, but he's also keeping you alive. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and I saw her war with pride and relief, independence and necessity, the same war I'd fought in that restaurant. What does he want from you? I could have lied, should have lied, but exhaustion had stripped away my ability to pretend. Everything, I whispered. He wants me to belong to him, to be his completely. And I said yes because you're dying, and I couldn't... My voice broke. I couldn't watch you die in that basement, Mama. I couldn't. She pulled me down, wrapping her arms around me despite the IV and monitors. Oh, Mihija, my brave, foolish girl. I'm sorry. I sobbed into her shoulder. I'm so sorry. No. Her hand stroked my hair with surprising strength. No, you have nothing to apologize for. You did what you had to do, what any daughter would do. She pulled back, cupping my face. But you listen to me now. This man, Dimitri, he is not your salvation. He's buying you, Elena, and people who buy things believe they own them. I know. The admission tasted like ash. But what choice did I have? None. Her smile was sad and knowing. That's how men like him work. They create situations where you have no choice, then act like they're saving you. But maybe... She paused, studying my face. Maybe you can save yourself too. Maybe you can take what he offers and become stronger, not weaker. How? By never forgetting who you are. Her grip tightened. You are Elena Reyes, daughter of Maria Reyes. You are kind and strong and brave. Don't let him take that from you. Use his resources, accept his protection, but keep your soul, Mihicha, that he cannot buy. The door opened. Dimitri stood framed in the doorway, his dark eyes taking in the scene, me crying, Mama fierce despite her illness. He didn't enter, just waited. Mrs. Reyes, he said quietly, may I come in? Mama's spine straightened. It's your money paying for this room. I suppose I can't refuse. He moved inside with that controlled grace, stopping at the foot of her bed. I want you to understand something. Your daughter is under my protection now. That means you are too. The best doctors, any treatment you need, anything that will make you comfortable. It's already arranged. At what cost? Mama's voice held steel I rarely heard. Your daughter's companionship. He said it simply, no euphemisms. Her loyalty, her presence in my life. You mean her freedom. I mean her safety. His eyes hardened. You know what world you live in, Mrs. Reyes. You know what happens to beautiful girls with no protection, no money, no power. They get used up and thrown away. I'm offering Elena a different life. A gilded cage is still a cage. Yes, he didn't deny it. But it's better than drowning in the gutter. And Elena made her choice. Mama looked at me, and I saw everything in that gaze. Love, fear, regret, acceptance. Then take care of her, she said finally, or I will haunt you from beyond the grave. Something flickered across Dimitri's face. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a fellow warrior. You have my word. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and surreal luxury. I learned the rhythms of Dimitri's world, the late nights when he disappeared for business and returned smelling of cigar smoke and tension, the formal dinners where I wore designer dresses and smiled while dangerous men discussed things I pretended not to understand, the quiet mornings when he'd watch me over coffee with that intense, possessive gaze. He was patient in ways I hadn't expected. He didn't force intimacy, didn't demand I share his bed immediately. Instead, he courted me, if you could call it that. Gifts appeared in my room, jewelry, books, a new phone. He asked about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. He listened when I talked about Mama's improving health, the way color was returning to her cheeks. But always, there was the underlying current of ownership. The way his hand would settle at the small of my back in public, unmistakably proprietary. The guards who followed whenever I left the penthouse. The expensive clothes that marked me as his. The way other men would see me on his arm and immediately look away, recognizing a claim they dared not challenge. I was his. Everyone knew it, including me. 3 weeks after that first dinner, everything shifted. I woke to shouting, harsh Russian that cut through the penthouse's usual quiet. Dimitri's voice, razor-sharp with fury, and others responding with fear. I pulled on a robe and ventured into the hallway. Alexei stood outside Dimitri's office, his scarred face grim. Miss Reyes, you should... What's happening? The office door slammed open. Dimitri emerged, his face a mask of cold rage. He saw me and stopped, some of the fury banking. Get dressed, he said. Something's happened. We need to leave. Now. What? Where? Now, Elena. The command brooked no argument. I dressed quickly, my hands shaking. When I emerged, Dimitri waited with Alexei and 3 other guards, all armed with visible weapons. My stomach dropped. Dimitri, you're scaring me. He pulled me close, his hands framing my face. Someone made a move against me, a rival family. They killed 2 of my men and they're coming for more. His eyes bored into mine. I need to handle this. But first, I'm getting you somewhere safe. I don't understand. You don't need to. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. You just need to trust that I will protect what's mine. Always. We moved through the building's parking garage, surrounded by guards. 3 SUVs waited, engines running. Dimitri guided me into the middle vehicle, sliding in beside me. The convoy pulled out with military precision. Where are we going? I asked. A safe house outside the city. His phone buzzed constantly, messages coming in rapid succession. You'll stay there until this is resolved. And you? I have to end this. His jaw clenched. Permanently. The meaning was clear. People would die. Maybe many people. And Dimitri would be the one who ordered it. I should have been horrified, terrified, desperate to escape. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was his world. Brutal, violent, unforgiving. And I'd chosen to enter it. More than that, I'd chosen him. Be careful, I heard myself say. He looked at me, surprise flickering across his features, then his hand found mine, squeezing tightly. You're worried about me. Of course I am. The admission came easier than expected. You're keeping my mother alive. And I paused, searching for words. You're mine too, aren't you? In your way. Something fierce and possessive blazed in his eyes. He pulled me onto his lap, heedless of Alexei in the front seat, and kissed me with a hunger that stole my breath. His hands tangled in my hair, holding me captive, and I felt his heart hammering against mine. Mine. He breathed against my lips. You understand now, finally. Yes, the word was surrender and claim simultaneously. I understand. The safe house was actually a compound. High walls, armed guards, enough security to repel a small army. Dimitri left me there with Katya and 4 bodyguards, his farewell kiss bruising in its intensity. I'll come back to you, he promised. Wait for me. Then he was gone, and I was alone with my thoughts and fears. 2 days passed like years. Katya kept me fed and distracted. But I couldn't stop imagining Dimitri bleeding out in some warehouse, his beautiful face destroyed by bullets. The rational part of my brain said I should hope for his death. It would free me, wouldn't it? But the thought made me physically ill. When had he stopped being my captor and become... what? My lover, my obsession? Mine? On the 3rd day, engines roared outside. I ran to the window, heart in my throat. The convoy returned. Dimitri emerged from the lead SUV, alive and whole, though his shirt was torn and blood-stained. Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees buckled. He found me in the living room. I didn't think, just ran to him, throwing my arms around him despite the blood and dirt. He caught me, lifting me off the ground, burying his face in my hair. It's done, he said roughly. It's over. You're safe. I was so scared. I sobbed into his shoulder. I thought, shh. His hand stroked my back. I told you. I protect what's mine. Always. He carried me to the bedroom, kicking the door shut behind us, and there, finally, we crossed the last boundary. His hands were gentle despite their urgency. His kisses hungry but careful. He worshipped my body like something precious, murmuring words in Russian I didn't understand but felt in my bones. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets with his arm heavy across my waist, I traced the scars on his chest. What happens now? I asked. Now we go home. His fingers threaded through my hair. Your mother's treatment is working. The doctors say she might have years, not months. I've bought the building she's in and converted the top floor into a private apartment for her. When she's well enough, she'll move in there. Close but independent. The way she'd want. Tears pricked my eyes. You did that? I take care of my family. His lips brushed my temple. And your family now, Elena. Completely. Irrevocably. Mine. The word didn't scare me anymore. Somewhere in the past weeks, I'd stopped fighting the truth. I was his. And strangely, terrifyingly, perfectly, he was mine too. 6 months later, I stood in Mama's new apartment, watching her move around her kitchen with strength she hadn't had in years. The treatment had worked miracles. Her hair was growing back, color had returned to her cheeks, and her laughter, I'd forgotten the sound of her real laughter, filled the space. He's good to you? She asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear it. Yes. I touched the diamond pendant at my throat, Dimitri's gift for our anniversary of that first dinner. In his way, it's not conventional, but it's real. And you love him. I thought about denying it, but Mama deserved truth. Yes, I admitted. God help me, I do. She smiled sadly. Love doesn't ask permission, Mihija. It just happens. Even when it's complicated. Even when it's dangerous. Just promise me you'll keep your soul. That's all I ask. I promise. That evening, I returned to the penthouse to find Dmitri on the balcony, watching the city lights. I joined him, and his arm came around me automatically, pulling me against his side. Your mother looks well, he said. Thanks to you. I leaned into his warmth. Dmitri, I need to tell you something. He tensed slightly. What? When I paid Victor's bus fare, I never imagined it would lead here, to you, to this life. I turned to face him. I thought I was just being kind, but you saw it as something more, something worth possessing, yes? No apology, just acknowledgement. I fought it for so long, hated you for trapping me, for taking my choice away. I placed my hand over his heart, feeling its steady rhythm. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being your prisoner and became yours. Willingly. Completely. His eyes blazed with emotion, triumph, possession, and something deeper. Something that might have been love in a man capable of such a thing. Say it, he demanded roughly. Say what you are. Yours. The word was freedom and surrender. I'm yours, Dmitri. And you. I smiled, feeling the truth of it. You're mine too, whether you planned for that or not. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and somehow tender. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I didn't plan for this, he admitted. I thought I wanted possession, control. But you gave me something else, something I didn't know I needed. What? A home. His hand cupped my face. Not a place, a person. You're my home, Elena. The only one that matters. Below us, the city sprawled in glittering chaos, my old neighborhood somewhere in that darkness, barely visible from these heights. I'd risen from those streets through a combination of kindness, desperation, and the obsession of a dangerous man. I should have regretted it, should have mourned my lost freedom. Instead, I felt whole for the first time in my life. Not because Dmitri had saved me, though he had, but because I'd saved myself too. I'd kept my soul, as Mama said. I'd transformed his possession into partnership, his obsession into something mutual. We'd both been prisoners. Him to his world of violence and control, me to poverty and desperation. And somehow, impossibly, we'd freed each other. Take me inside, I whispered against his lips. He smiled, dark and possessive, and entirely mine. Always, Malaya, always. And as he carried me over the threshold into our shared kingdom of marble and shadows, I knew I'd made the right choice. Not because it was easy or safe or conventional, but because it was ours, forged from bus fare and desperation, tempered by obsession and care, and sealed with a love as dangerous and unbreakable as the man who held me. I was Elena Reyes, daughter of Maria, survivor of struggles, and chosen woman of Dmitri Volkov. And I was finally, irrevocably, home.